Okay, guys, we're gonna start it like we always do with the bell ringer. You should actually have done this already by looking at the lecture itself, the PowerPoint version of it, because there isn't really time to get the question unless you pause it and get through it, because I'm gonna go through it pretty quickly. Here you have the title slide. This one we're looking at all power to the Soviets. So we looked at the Soviets last time. They are local councils to kind of help govern the entire country in each of the different regions. So peace, land, and bread. It's kind of Vladimir Lenin's entire plan for the country that everybody will have peace, everybody will have land, and everybody will have bread. Peace, place to work, and food. So Lenin and his Bolsheviks start to take over all of these Soviets that had been established in each of the major Russian cities. They haven't quite moved out into the like kind of countryside or farmlands because there isn't really a point to yet. Start with the major cities, then make your way out because major cities have more impact here. And they start sending in the Bolshevik Red Guard. A lot of time you think of Russian Bolsheviks, you think of red, or at least you're supposed to. They have the Red Army or the Red Guard as their police force. So they take control of the Soviets and then they move in and take control of the government as a whole and get rid of the provisional government that was already there. First thing that he looks at is he wants everybody to be equal because what he's going to try to promote is equality in an egalitarian society. Egalitarian just means equal. So he's going to make sure that everybody has some of farmland, or at least all the peasants do, so that they have something to work on in order to make food and products for everybody to share. They're also given control of the factories because if you remember, the proletariat or our working class are considered the most powerful group of people in Russia or in any new socialist country. And he also gets them out of the war. Vladimir Lenin is the person that gets them out of World War One. And what you guys should know is that they signed a treaty with Germany in order to do this, and that treaty is the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, signed in March of 1918. It got them out of the war. But they had to give up a lot of the land that they had gained, and even some of the land that they already had, in order to get out of the war. This made a lot of the Russians angry, but as a whole, they were still in support of Vladimir Lenin. So the Red Army, this is the new Bolshevik army, but they're facing some problems at home because you do have those people that weren't happy about having to give up the land as a result of the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk. But anybody that was opposing the Bolsheviks were known as the White Army. Good, clear distinction. Red Army, think of blood being spilled and kind of maybe even your evil a little bit. Think of them as the Bolsheviks, and your White Army is kind of everybody else. But the problem is that they all didn't really like each other. They just knew they all hated the Bolsheviks, and so they all kind of rallied behind hating the Bolsheviks, but they didn't really rally behind anything else. They are aided by the West because they are a little bit more democratically minded, but they're destroyed. Absolutely destroyed because the Red Army has something worth fighting for, so they're just our army. After the Bolsheviks take control, Russia is left in disarray. It's a civil war between red and white, and things just go wrong. Trade, not happening. So they're not being friends with really any of the rest of the world, so all they have is what they make themselves. Production dropped because here's how it works in this new Marxist socialist society is that everybody works for everybody, and whether you work harder or more or less isn't going to get you any more or less because everyone's going to get exactly the same. And a lot of the skilled workers left. They fled the country because they liked the way things were before, where you're the people that put out more effort, they got rewarded. But the new Bolshevik way of working in the factories didn't reward that extra work, so they ended up having to leave the country. But Lenin is going to start trying to change, make things a little bit better economically and in society and culturally and everything. So you have his economic plan. This is kind of one of the first major policies that he puts into place. he has a small scale version of capitalism. I don't think we looked at the word capitalism yet. Well, no, I think we did actually with the Industrial Revolution. But capitalism is greed. It's money fueling everything. It's buying and selling stuff. If you look over at the image here, you got Coca-Cola, you got Ford, you got Burger King, you got McDonald's. You have all these things, all these places that you are spending money at. You also have a little bit of capitalism with your farmers. We talked about it just a few minutes ago about how farmers, or all the peasants, became farmers, or at least were given farmland. But now, these farmers could take some of their extra leftovers, their surplus is in excess, and they could sell it, some of it anyway, instead of just giving it to the government like the original plan was. Government controlled most of the industries. The proletariat controlled the factories, but the government as a whole wants to regulate and maintain order within those businesses and those factories. You also have a handful of small private businesses, which you would never ever see in the truest form of this type of government. But Lenin realized that you need to start small and then make yourself up a little bit bigger. Another problem that they faced, so they faced the White Army, and now they're having to fight nationalism. Well, with nationalism is that you have support of a country and an idea, and not necessarily to the people themselves. So Bolshevik feared this idea of nationalism. They wanted to separate Russia into republics so that none of them could really unite against the government. That you didn't have all of Russia coming together to fight against the government. You had them each individually separated and each individually controlled. And so this new separated Russia is going to be actually renamed as the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, or the USSR, which is what it will be known until the early 1990s. At the same time, he also created the Communist Party, which is what they have been known for most of their existence. Lenin dies of a stroke. And so someone has to take control. And there are two people that kind of come out as the major two that are fighting for this control. You have Leon Trotsky, who everybody thought was going to be the one to take over because he was kind of like Lenin's right-hand man. If you look at a lot of early pictures of Lenin, you'll probably see Leon Trotsky somewhere in the background. The other guy is Joseph Stalin, the guy that's kind of pictured over here with our proletariat picture. But he's not a nice person. He's a very, very, very mean man, and we'll learn about him more with our next lesson. But he'll win out, and Trotsky is exiled because he saw Trotsky as a threat. And what's the best way to deal with threat? You get rid of it. Problem is that Lenin, he kind of liked Stalin, but he never wanted him to take control because he could kind of see what would happen if Stalin ever did take control. Alright guys, that's the end of this lecture. Next lesson is not actually going to be a lecture, it's going to be a couple of posters, but it's going to be a little bit different posters that we usually look at. But we will be looking at Joseph Stalin and totalitarian regimes, kind of like we saw with our V for Vendetta clips.